A creature born of nightmare and myth, a hydra drawn from the darkest corners of ancient legend, or a spectre from a filmmaker's imagination. But this is no fantasy. This is a ghost, etched in stone, a real animal that breathed the air of our world millions of years ago. And it is not the only discovery to force scientists to question the evidence of their own eyes. To become a fossil is to win a lottery against oblivion. The odds are so profoundly stacked against it that less than 1% of all life that has ever existed escapes the finality of decay to be immortalized in rock. Each one, therefore, is a miracle of preservation. But even among these miracles, some stand alone, whispering stories so improbable they challenge our understanding of life itself. Our story begins with a creature that appears to have slithered directly out of mythology. In 2006, from the ancient lakebeds of China, a specimen of Hyphalosaurus emerged that seemed to defy biology. At first, British paleontologists believed they were looking at two separate individuals entangled in death. But meticulous examination revealed a truth far stranger. It was a single organism with two heads, two necks, and two brains. A condition known as polycephaly, captured in stone for the first and only time in the planet's history. Despite the sensational headlines, this was no dinosaur. The Hyphalosaurus belonged to the Choristodera, a lineage of aquatic reptiles that glided through the deep freshwater lakes of the early Cretaceous. No larger than a house cat, they were highly successful predators, hunting small fish visible anatomy. And here, the story turns from wonder to tragedy. This two-headed marvel was a juvenvantage. They are a death sentence. Yet this singular fossil offers a tantalizing clue. Polycephaly is far more common in modern reptiles, snakes, turtles, than in mammaliapsids to ever walk the earth with the dinosaurs. It means that somewhere, in the lost world of the Mesozoic, two-headed dinosaurs may well have existed, their impossible remains still waiting to be unearthed. But the Earth holds stranger secrets still. We travel now 250 million years into the past to the Karoo Basin of southern Africa, a world recovering from the greatest extinction event in history. Here, in 2013, a team uncovered a fossilized burrow. Such finds are rare, but what lay sealed inside was a table mammal, a survivor of the apocalypse that had wiped out most of life on Earth. It was a predator, a creature that had weathered the end of the world. And it was not alone. In the devastating aftermath of the Great Dying, the Permian-Triassic extinction that scoured the Earth of nearly all life, the world was a scorched and hostile frontier. It was from a fossil bed capturing this apocalyptic recovery in the Karoo Basin of South Africa that a block of stone was unearthed. Inside, the familiar skeleton of a Thrinaxodon, for a time forgotten. It was just another victim of a harsh era, curled in its burrow for a final eternal sleep. For years it sat on a shelf, a silent testament to a world reborn from ash. But curiosity is a patient force in science. Eventually, the specimen was subjected to the piercing gaze of a high-resolution scanner, a routine procedure to map the bones within the stone. And it was here, in the silent hum of the machine, that the impossible began to take shape. A ghost in the data, a second skeleton, an impossible shadow intertwined with the first. Pressed against the Thrinaxodon was another creature, so close they appeared to be locked in a final embrace. But this was no kin. It was an amphibian, a Brumistega, a representative of the ancient temnospondyles, a group not known for digging or dwelling in burrows. The questions were immediate and profound. What was a lumbering amphibian doing in the sanctuary of a proto-mammal? Why were they pressed together, sharing this subterranean tomb? The first, most brutal assumption was conflict. A desperate struggle, one creature preying upon the other, interrupted by a sudden catastrophe. But the bones told a different story. The two were not predator and prey in any conventional sense. And more importantly, their skeletons were clean, bearing no marks of a violent fight to the death within the confines of the burrow. The predator theory dissolved. The truth, when it was pieced together, was a far more poignant narrative. A closer examination of the Brumistega revealed its plight. Its ribs were fractured, Its skull bore the faint, telltale indentations of an attacker's bite. These were not fresh wounds, they were injuries sustained long before it found this final refuge. It was a creature in agony, wounded and weakened, seeking shelter from an unforgiving world. In the searing heat of the early Triassic, it had dragged its broken body across a parched landscape, and by chance or desperation, found the entrance to this burrow. Inside, the Thrinaxodon was already in residence. Perhaps it was in a state of estivation, a deep torpor to survive the punishing drought and heat, and was barely aware of its new companion. Perhaps it tolerated the intruder, too weak or indifferent to force it out. Or perhaps, in a world defined by shared hardship, it simply made space. Whatever the reason, they came to rest side by side. The amphibian on the right, the proto-mammal on the left. Two beings from vastly different branches of life, sharing the last sanctuary on Earth. And then the sky broke. A flash flood, a sudden violent torrent of mud and water cascaded across the land, pouring into the burrow and sealing it in an instant. There was no escape. They perished together, drowned in the dark, their bodies preserved in that quiet, accidental embrace. For 250 million years they lay undisturbed, a singular fossilized record of two strangers finding a shared fate at the end of the world. Sometimes, however, the profound rarity of a discovery lies not in the circumstances of a creature's death, but in the very fact of its life. The year is 2012. We are high in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, inside the Denisova Cave, a place already sacred to paleoanthropology, a chamber that holds the ghosts of our own complex past. It was here that the Denisovans, a mysterious and extinct branch of the human family tree, were first revealed to the world. Archaeologists sift through millennia of dust, meticulously sorting nearly 2,000 bone fragments. Most are unidentifiable splinters, the detritus of ancient life. But one piece, a sliver of long bone no larger than a thumbnail, was set aside for the routine process of DNA analysis. The results that came back were not routine. They were revolutionary. The scientists who read the genetic sequence could scarcely believe the code unfurling on their screens. This was not just an individual with mixed ancestry from generations past. This was a first-generation hybrid, a direct biological child of two entirely different species of human. They named her Denny. 90,000 years ago, she was a living, breathing girl, and she was, to our knowledge, utterly unique. Her mother was a Neanderthal, her father a Denisovan. This single, tiny fragment of bone is the only confirmed first-generation hominin hybrid ever found. Among all the remains of ancient humans, of chimpanzees, of gorillas, it forces us to move beyond the abstract data of genomes and migration maps and to imagine a person. A child whose mother and father belonged to different peoples, different cultures, perhaps even speaking in different tongues. What life, in a world of ice and stone, she was living proof that the lines we draw between species were, for our ancestors, far more beautifully and mysteriously blurred. She was not an anomaly to be studied, but a human being, a daughter, whose existence hints at a shared story of humanity far richer and more connected than we ever dared to imagine. What did she think in her final moments? What world did she see? A fragment of bone, unearthed from the cold floor of a Siberian cave, holds a story that rewrites the very definition of our humanity. We call her Denny. She was barely a teenager when she died, some 90,000 years ago, and her existence proves that the ancient world was far more complex, far more interconnected than we ever dared to imagine. For generations, we believed the encounters between our ancient relatives, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and early Homo sapiens, were rare, perhaps accidental collisions in the vastness of prehistoric Eurasia. Denny's legacy tells a different story. Analysis of her DNA revealed a truth that stunned the scientific world. Her mother was a Neanderthal, and her father a Denisovan. She was a first-generation child of two distinct human species. This was not an anomaly. It was evidence of a pattern, a systematic and enduring exchange that unfolded over millennia. The story is written even deeper within her genes. Her Denisovan father carried his own hidden history, traces of Neanderthal ancestors from an encounter that had occurred some 600 generations before his time. The implication is staggering. These ancient peoples were not isolated groups. They migrated, they met, they formed families, and they did so again and again, weaving a complex tapestry of human ancestry. And what is most astonishing is that this story did not end with them. It lives on, inside of us. Every modern human living outside of Africa carries a small percentage of this ancient inheritance, fragments of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA embedded in our own genetic code. We are their continuation. We are the living archive of their forgotten world. Yet Deni remains unique. She is the only individual from this lost time whom we can know by name, the only one whose hybrid identity is recorded not in the faint genetic echoes of descendants, but in the silent testimony of her own bones. The story of Deni is written in a language of molecules, an echo from a world we can never truly see. But sometimes the past speaks to us not in code, but in flesh and stone, preserved against impossible odds. The word fossil conjures images of skeleton and dust, a bleached outline of a life long vanished. But on the rarest of occasions, the earth gives up a ghost. It returns to us not just bone, but skin, muscle, and secrets. It gives us dinosaur mummies. In the year 1908, deep in the Badlands of Wyoming, a discovery was made that would forever change our vision of the deep past. An Edmontosaurus, a colossal duck-billed dinosaur, was found not as a skeleton, but as a body. Its skin, vast portions of it, remained intact. For the very first time, paleontologists could see and touch the true texture of these creatures. It was not a coarse, reptilian armor, but a mosaic of two distinct types of non-overlapping scales, creating a fine, almost delicate surface. They could see the fingers, perfectly preserved, with the ghostly outlines of the tendons that once gave them motion. It was only the beginning. Nearly a century later, a young Brachylophosaurus, nicknamed Leonardo, emerged from the earth. The preservation was almost miraculous. 90% of its body was still cloaked in its skin. The contours of its powerful muscles were visible beneath. Its horny beak, the bony frill on its head, all remained. But the most intimate details were held within. Its stomach contents were preserved, a final meal of ferns and other vegetation. And among the plants, a darker story, the fossilized remains of parasitic worms that had infested the poor animal. Leonardo looks as though it could simply stand and walk away. It has been dead for 77 million years. Yet even this marvel is eclipsed by the absolute champion of preservation. In 2007, in the oil sands of Alberta, Canada, miners unearthed what they thought was a marine reptile. Land animals had never been found in these ancient sea-floor deposits. But this was no creature of the sea. It was a Borealopelta, a heavily armored nodosaur. And it was perfect. The skin, the interlocking plates of armor, the great spikes on its shoulders, all were in their natural place, as if the animal had simply laid down to rest. Its last meal was still inside it, a mix of ferns, stems, and wood, laced with a strange quantity of charcoal, suggesting it had been grazing in a recently burned forest. During its excavation, disaster struck. The protective plaster jacket failed, and the colossal fossil fell, shattering into pieces. But through painstaking restoration, it was reborn. And in that rebirth, it offered up its most profound secret. Borealopelta held the ghost of its color. Preserved within its armored skin were melanosomes, the microscopic pigment cells that once gave it life and vibrancy. It is the only mummified dinosaur ever found with such a feature. Scientists could finally determine its true appearance. This mighty fortress of a creature was not a drab gray or green. In life, the Borealopelta was a creature of reddish-brown and auburn hues, a vibrant giant in a verdant world. From a girl's DNA in a Siberian cave to the skin of a dinosaur in a Canadian mine, these are more than just discoveries. They are connections. They are tangible proof that the past is not a foreign country, but a foundation buried just beneath our feet. They remind us that history is not simply a story we tell, but a physical presence we unearth from the ground and a living code we carry in our blood. Across the unfathomable depths of time, the fossil record offers us whispers of lost worlds. It is a library of stone where most volumes are incomplete, their stories fragmented. We reconstruct ancient life from shards of bone, from mineralized teeth, from faint impressions left in ancient mud. But on the rarest of occasions, geology conspires with chance to preserve not just a creature, but a moment, a behavior, an action, a story frozen in time. For hundreds of millions of years, vertebrates have lived, fought, and reproduced across this planet. Countless generations have played out the fundamental drama of existence. Yet in the entire history of paleontology, across all mammals, reptiles, fish, and birds, we have unearthed only a single pair of vertebrates captured in the act of mating. Just one. A discovery so delicate, so improbable, it redefines our understanding of what can be saved from the abyss of time. The subjects of this singular fossil were not mighty dinosaurs, but a pair of prehistoric turtles. Their story begins in the early 2010s, in the fossil-rich clays of the Messel Pit in Germany. This former quarry is a world-renowned window into the Eocene epoch, a time capsule that has yielded exquisitely preserved specimens of countless species. But this find surpassed them all. There, etched into a slab of oil shale, were two turtles of the species, Aleocalis crassus sculpta. They were intertwined, their bodies positioned in an unmistakable posture, tails aligned in the precise manner required for copulation. The size difference and anatomical details confirmed their identities, a male and a female. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of territorial aggression. This was not a fossil of conflict, but of creation. They were engaged in the most intimate of biological acts, and in that very instant they died. What catastrophic event could so perfectly preserve such a fleeting moment? The scene of their demise was a deep tropical volcanic lake nestled within a crater. On the surface, it may have appeared idyllic, a paradise for aquatic life. But this tranquility was a deadly illusion. Deeper within the water column, the volcano silently seeped a lethal cocktail of toxic gases, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and other poisons, into the lake. The upper layers remained oxygenated and safe, but the depths were a death trap. For turtles, mating in the water is an arduous and exhausting process. As this pair became consumpted down just 10 meters, but it was far enough. Here, their own physiology, a unique evolutionary advantage, turned against them. Aleocalis possessed remarkably porous skin, an adaptation that allowed them to absorb dissolved oxygen directly from the water, supplementing their lungs. But this biological marvel came with a fatal flaw. They could not close their skin. As they sank into the toxic layer, the dissolved poisons permeated their bodies almost instantly. Their death was nearly simultaneous, a shared, silent surrender to the invisible forces of the earth. Together, they settled onto the soft sediment of the lakebed. The anoxic conditions that had killed them now served to protect them, warding off scavengers and decay. A gentle rain of fine clay and dead algae slowly entombed them, preserving their final embrace with perfect fidelity. For 47 million years they lay undisturbed, a silent testament to a moment of life cut short. This fossil is more than a curiosity. It is a bridge to our own time. The ancient family to which these turtles belonged, the Ceratochelaidae, still exists today, but it has been reduced to a single, lonely branch on the tree of life. The pig-nosed turtle of Australia and New Guinea, a species now teetering on the brink of extinction. The 47-million-year-old embrace is a poignant reminder of a lineage now facing its own twilight. While the fossil record has yielded other examples of frozen behavior, insects caught in amber, or even ancient trilobites linked together, this remains the only known instance for any vertebrate. It is a singular data point in the grand narrative of life, a window into an act that is fundamental to existence, yet almost never preserved. It speaks to the brutal indifference of nature and the extraordinary power of geology. A fleeting moment of instinct, now an eternal lesson in stone. reminding us that even the most private acts of life can be preserved against the vastness of oblivion. The chronicle of life is written in exceptions. It is a history of improbable coincidences, of moments where events conspired to go both perfectly right and catastrophically wrong. A two-headed Hyphalosaurus, an embryonic anomaly, should never have been immortalized in stone. Its life was too brief, its delicate bones destined for dust. The cynodont Thrinaxodon and the amphibian Brumistega, creatures from different worlds, should never have met their end in the same burrow, yet they were found together, eternal sheltermates, against a forgotten apocalypse. The child known as Denny, a first-generation hybrid of two distinct human lineages, is a 1 in billions chance. A whisper of a shared past that survived against all odds. Mummified dinosaurs defy the very laws of decomposition, their fossilized skin a ghost of flesh that time was meant to erase. Each is a miracle, a testament to a story that should not exist, yet does, in our museums, our research, our imagination. These are not merely relics, they are paradoxes etched into rock, reminders that nature's narrative is filled with the most unbelievable plot twists. The impossible does not just happen, it is preserved, and it forces us to wonder, how many other impossible stories lie sleeping beneath our feet, waiting for the precise moment to be unearthed? How many chapters in the epic of life have yet to be read?